The Beyond the Fame podcast is sponsored by the historic Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. Step into 1865. President Lincoln has been shot and the city is in chaos. As the newest deputy to join the ranks, the investigation is in your hands. Join Detective James McDevitt as you retrace the footsteps of the Lincoln assassination through the streets of downtown D.C. Whether you're a history buff, a true crime enthusiast, or just looking for an entertaining way to get your steps in, there's something for everyone in history on foot. For tickets, visit Fords.org. And of course, this podcast is powered year-round by our longtime sponsor, the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia. Upcoming featured entertainment includes Bow Wow, Bubba Sparks, and Twista on July 10th, followed by comedian Dusty Slay on July 11th. Details and tickets at HollywoodCasinoCharlestown.com. Must be 21 to enter the casino floor and attend a show. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top artists and entertainers of our time. Today marks the 10th anniversary of Alex Gibney's acclaimed documentary 0 Days, chronicling America's development of the Stuxnet virus to secretly attack Iran's nuclear capabilities. Gibney joined me in 2016 to discuss the timely film, as well as his prolific career from his Oscar nomination for Enron, The Smartest Guys in the Room, to his Oscar win for Taxi to the Dark Side, exploring post-9/11 torture policies. I'm here with the one and only Alex Gibney to talk his new documentary 0 Days, which will be opening the AFI Docs Film Festival. Alex, thanks so much for joining us.
Good to be here, Jason.
Now, I'd love to go into, more of your career later, but let's dive into this movie right off the bat. I actually just finished watching it about an hour or so ago. It's a great piece of work. So congrats on diving in there on a important issue.
Thank you.
Why? What brought you to this? When was it reading an article about Stuxnet, or was it when did you become aware of it, and what inspired you to say, all right, that's a movie?
The producer of a film I did about Julian Assange, We Steal Secrets, Mark Schmugger, came to me with this idea. And I'd known a little bit about it, but when he proposed it, I dug in and I thought this could be a really, really important thing. It wasn't something I knew a lot about. And in a way, that was part of the appeal for me. Let's find out something. It was curiosity about something that seemed to be very important. A real moment in history that hadn't been properly recognized.
Definitely, and maybe part of the reason that it wasn't properly recognized, A, it's new, but B, it's something that might be a little tricky to try to pull off visually. So I wanted to, it's a lot of code, it's a lot of, that sort of thing, computers. How did you set out and decide to sort of find visual ways to do it? You have the balloon that's sort of attached to the thing and exploding. You combined a bunch of interview subjects into sort of a digital. It's a woman, but at the end we realize it's an actress playing, reading a bunch of different collection of testimonies. How did you set out to sort of make it visual that way?
Look, it was hard because ultimately at the end of the day, the main character in this film is actually a piece of code, the Stuxnet code.
Right.
We had a lot of help through a wonderful graphics firm called Framestore. They do special effects for a lot of big Hollywood movies, and I'd worked with them before on We Steal Secrets. So I think we were able to bring the code to life. I also had at the center of the story two detectives. Every good story to me is a detective story.
Right.
And these guys were from Symantec, the antivirus company. They were the ones who originally broke down the Stuxnet code and figured out what it was and what it did. And so using them as kind of our guides into this world, it was like doing kind of a murder mystery. And they were helping to understand, what the weapon was, where the murder had taken place, so forth and so on. So all of that combined in a way that we had a kind of a beautiful digital landscape that we designed. And then we had a kind of spy thriller detective story at the heart of it to understand what was going on. And I think we managed to pull it off.
Yeah, definitely. The mystery thing sort of really makes it really pulls us in as an audience and helps us carry it along. So hats off for that. Take me into the decision, sort of, I guess it's early on to have sort of that montage of various officials refusing to comment on it. Why was that important for you to show boom 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 back to back that yes, you asked them, and B, they're not responding.
Right. And not responding to something that is well known.
In public, yeah.
Stuxnet at a certain point was well known, but nobody's responding to it in government. So many people responded that way that I felt I had to comment on it rather than just leave that unsaid. I felt I really had to make a statement about it, because part of the problem here is that we have a new weapons system. We have a new means of warfare, and yet nobody is talking about it. That's a huge change. And so secrecy, in a way, is putting us all at risk. As a result, I felt that part of the subject of the film would become this kind of obsessive and dangerous secrecy.
Definitely, and in terms of like just general thematic through line, I thought it really started to, the viewer will really step back and start to be a little nervous around the times. It's one thing that we show, the dangers of what we can unleash on Iran in this case or wherever. But what really I think sets it home for we the viewers here watching it here in the States is the idea that we created the monster and now it can be used against us. Is that sort of a theme you're trying to drive home?
Very definitely, because there's no country more vulnerable to cyber weapons than the United States of America, because we are so connected and so dependent on the internet that cyber weapons would be incredibly effective. And indeed, in response to the U.S.-Israeli attack on Iran, Iran counterattacked. They wiped out a lot of computers on a company called Saudi Aramco, and then they attacked the U.S. banking system and shut it down for a number of days. And we've since learned actually hacked into a New York State water filtration facility. So that should be a great concern to us. Imagine the idea that various parts of our grid, our transportation system, our water, everything that we depend on for modern survival may in fact already be targeted through time-lapse implants. That is to say, effectively, cyber time bombs waiting to be detonated.
For sure. And I know towards the end you go into sort of what's it called? The Nitrozeus? Is that what it's called?
Nitrozeus. One of the things we discovered, we started out doing a film about Stuxnet, or Olympic Games, which was the name of the operation. But over time, we discovered that there was an operation that was much bigger and much more powerful than Stuxnet, which ended up blowing up a few, maybe 1,000 centrifuges at the Iranian nuclear facility in Natanz. But Nitrozeus was an operation launched out of Cyber Command and the NSA that actually had the capability to shut down huge portions of Iran's grid and critical infrastructure. That was an enormous shock to us to see how far these weapons had progressed, and that basically you had a mission designed to shut down a country.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually kind of terrifying stuff. Where do you, you sort of leave it, you leave the documentary with, sort of the U.S.-Iran nuclear deal and the president and then also Netanyahu as well. Where do you sort of, see this thing headed? Are you hopeful, or, what's next in your ideal state, and then in what you actually think is going to happen?
Well, I'm pessimistic but hopeful. I'm pessimistic in the sense that nobody seems to be grappling with this, and the government has done too good a job of keeping it all secret, so that when it comes to offensive cyber weapons, and our government certainly has been, good about highlighting the need for defense, but they've been very bad at acknowledging the existence of offensive cyber weapons, in fact, because they don't want any rules or regulations to inhibit their use. I'm hopeful in the sense that just as with nuclear weapons and just as with chemical weapons, there was a scary period where there were no rules and regulations and there were no international agreements. I'm hopeful that if we can put enough pressure on our politicians to acknowledge the use of these cyber weapons, we can get some kind of international agreements over their use. That doesn't mean that they won't be breached, but at least we'll have some sense of reckoning and protection for an eventuality that could impact us all in an existential way.
Absolutely. Tell me, just stepping back, how exciting is it to and an honor to be opening AFI Docs tonight? And because they had you as the subject of the Guggenheim Symposium a few years back, right? Like I know this year it's Werner Herzog, but you already got that big honor, the annual honor once. So just talk about the festival in that regard.
Well, AFI Docs has become a premier documentary festival, and so we're thrilled to be the opening night film. And also because so much of this film revolves around decisions made in Washington, D.C., it seemed very appropriate for us to launch tonight. So we're just delighted, and I'm looking forward to the screening at the museum.
Absolutely. Well, it's a big honor to kick that off. But obviously, an even bigger honor to to get that symposium a couple years ago. What are your memories from that? How cool of an experience is that for AFI Docs fans to show up and be able to have one of the masters like Herzog or yourself, or walk them through their work? It's pretty amazing.
Well, it was a great honor, that honor, and it was a thrill to get it. Particularly for a festival like AFI Docs that means so much to the documentary community.
How much did speak on this year's honoree Herzog? How much did he inspire you? Coming up in your career.
Yes, I'm a huge Werner Herzog fan. Grizzly Man is one of my favorite documentaries of all time.
That's great.
As is Little Dieter Learns to Fly. I just think Werner is a wonder, and I'm particularly interested in him because for a long time there was a kind of unspoken rule that it wasn't cool to use narration in your documentaries, which I thought in some ways could be dishonest. Sometimes that's a very good thing. One of the things that Werner taught us all is that you can make interesting films where you examine your subjects in detail, but also you don't leave out the point of view of the filmmaker.
Right.
And while it's been mocked in some circles, in his narration, I think it's a mark of affection and respect because it's so wonderful when he thinks out loud about the kind of things that he's confronting. He's thinking for all of us, and so I just think he's an extraordinary filmmaker.
Yeah, and now you see a lot of movies, since him doing the narration too. I mean, they once said that reenactments weren't cool for within Blue Line and whatever, but
right.
But now that's deemed amazing. So it's people are ahead of their time for a reason. I'm glad people are catching up with some of these ideas. All right, cool. Well, I know we're sort of up against the clock. If you don't mind, I'd love to. Run through maybe in a rapid fire way. Just maybe I'll throw out some of your amazing films over the years, and just tell me your memories of it and how much you think it's affected the world since, if anything's changed or not.
Sure.
Your big first Oscar nominee, the Enron doc. What's your when I say that, what's the first thing you think of?
Well, the first thing I think of is it broke rule number 1A of the filmmaking handbook, which is never make a film about accounting. But I think that Enron shone a light on a lot of corporate practices that came back to haunt us in 2008.
The crash.
So it remains a very current and important film, I think, for that reason.
Yeah, you were sort of on the ground floor of that one. So people got to come to watch your docs, man. All right, cool. Taxi to the Dark Side. It won you the Oscar. What was that whole experience like?
It was a very haunting and personal film for me. I mean, my father's in that film. He died during the making of it.
Wow.
He was a naval interrogator in the Pacific Theater in World War II, and he was passionately furious at the Bush-Cheney administration for essentially legitimizing torture. And that film ended up having a powerful impact, both on me personally, but also, it ended up being required viewing at the Army JAG School, for example. And I think, remains quite current to this day as we continue to try to reckon with this legacy of torture, and people still trying to cover it up.
Yeah, definitely. Freakonomics. I believe you're Heidi, your co-director on that, is also screening the Norman Lear this time. What about Freakonomics?
Freakonomics was just a gas. I mean, it was a fun book, and then they got together a group of interesting and diverse directors to do segments. I grew up partially in Japan, and I got to do one about corruption in sumo wrestling, which was a blast. I've always been a big sumo wrestling fan.
People might not have known that about you. There you go. The WikiLeaks, We Still Secrets. What still lingers with you about that? Well,
Julian Assange is still in the Ecuadorian embassy, so that's lingering. I think that what remains about that film is an ongoing debate about what should and should not be secret. Mm-hmm. And frankly, there was also a haunting personal story there that I think, or I hope, should be rectified. Chelsea Manning, the person who was the leaker, not Julian Assange, right, is still in prison with an appallingly long sentence, considering what he had done. I would strongly argue for a commutation.
Okay. Well, we don't have to go into everything. I mean, I also love the Armstrong lie, and I loved your Steve Jobs Man in the Machine last year. It was sort of a nice little counter to Hollywood's version with right, the fiction one, and also your Steve Bartman thing for 30 for 30. So thanks for that.
I love that one. I had a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah, it was great. I just wanted to run through those to give our listeners a sense of just the breadth of work here. Alex Gibney, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. And keep up the great work. It's been awesome to follow your career.
Thanks, man. Much appreciated.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.